believe it, and they think, well, I must be feeling this way because I'm crazy, and there's something wrong with me, and so that's why he's hitting me, because I'm crazy, and he's telling me these things because he really loves me and wants me to be better. And so this is probably one of the most psychologically damaging of the verbal abuse. Manipulating someone to believe that they are not thinking right, and then that leads to somebody getting medicated and a lot more damage.
So, for example, if you're doing a home visit with mom and dad tells you later, she's a little crazy. She acts a little, there's something wrong with her. That's kind of a setup to suggest that your spouse or your partner is crazy, and then to kind of explain why it's a bit of a setup. Because in a healthy relationship, a husband or wife wouldn't do that. Wouldn't say to the person that comes into their home, oh, she's crazy. Don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
I've heard that a lot, actually. They blame the next person when in reality it's them.
It's
They
them.
blame, and the person starts believing that it's really them and it's them.
After many years, it's almost welcome. Someone can say, well, I must be crazy. I've heard it all these years, and I do know that I personally do weird things. I must be crazy. There's some statistics about older women after their children are gone and they're still with the same person about having real mental health problems of living in environments that are very severe. New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence did a study, and there's a lot of mental health issues after a long time living like that. So, emotional. So emotional abuse. What does that look like? What does that sound like?
Manipulation. To get them to believe what that person is saying is reality.
Mm-hmm.
Blame. They accept blame for what they're not for.
Right, so they're blamed and then they accept it. Yeah. In terms of a person who abuses, what does emotional abuse? How does someone emotionally abuse another person? How does that happen?
You could do it by
Name calling again?
you could do it by targeting not necessarily that person, but something that person holds dear to them. By making it so they can't see their children, or making it difficult to see their children, or maybe even trying to convince their children that their parents are bad or mommy's bad or something like that.
Getting all that, Jean?
Sorry, that was
That's okay. And on that same note, one of the things that a lot of times abusers will target a person's pet, your dog, your cat, and that often that happens. Well, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to kill your cat,
Or their family, like
Family.
Or get rid of it, or
Isolation.
everybody else away.
So isolation is emotional, and it's also physical because it's a physical distance. It's painful. It's psychological also. Isolating someone, any of us, if we're isolated and alone, sometimes when you have to stay home sick and you're by yourself, you feel very isolated. Imagine having that as your normal life, that you're isolated from everyone.
Breaking down someone's defenses. Breaking down people's defenses.
Right, yes. Preying on weakness. Along the same lines, if someone wanted to go to college, not letting them go to school, throwing away their books, hiding their books, going to work and interrupting the work, showing up at work and making such a scene that, and I remember I worked in a shelter program, and when women would lose their jobs because they couldn't work. They would have someone at work all the time. You might even have it sometimes in your centers. Excuses. Which is a denial thing too. It's just not really taking responsibility.
I don't know if this would fit, but taking away somebody's stability, and if they, you know, if they have something that means a lot to them, whether it be like something like physical, that they have like, maybe like a necklace of their, you know, mothers or something like that.
Yep. So that's emotional and it's also psychological, because the intention is to harm that person psychologically. So when you kind of look at that pattern of the abuse, if you fill all of this into that, you're not really just talking about the violence. You're talking about all of the other things that happen to someone in that situation. It's not just one thing. Anything else for emotional? Think of anything, Melissa or Jean, that you forgot?
Harassment or like stalking, like standing at the end of the driveway and just staring at the house, just to intimidate
Psychological,
people.
terrifying someone, yeah. Yeah. In New York State, stalking is now illegal, it's against the law,
But it's very hard to prove.
but it's very hard to prove, as are so many other things that relate to domestic violence,
Embarrassment,
embarrassment,
like in public.
publicly embarrassing someone. And this goes along with what you said earlier, but a person who has a disability, making fun of them, telling them they're not capable, not providing for them, when that's their main, the person who does provide for them. Anything else emotional? Psychological? Oh, did we get everything? Okay. How about financial? Economic or financial?
Lording control over someone's access or utilization of their own finances.
Or the family finances?
And I think an example of that, I don't know that for sure, but in a case like the Ray Rice situation, you may have a woman that's marrying a man or is married to a man that has a lot of money. I think that's a very real consideration for them in determining whether or not they're going to leave a situation. Am I going to have any ability to survive afterward?
Does that make sense? Did everyone hear? So, can you survive if you were to leave the person? And even if you're not planning on leaving the person, just knowing that you can't because of those reasons changes everything, makes you more dependent. It makes leaving almost impossible. And we're going to talk a lot about why women stay a little bit later. Any other financial?
Taking their items, so like for example, if a woman owns a car, she starts dating a guy, he starts driving her car all the time, and then the next thing you know, he's dropping her off to work and picking her up from work, so she doesn't even have control of her own vehicle.
And waiting for her in the parking lot. And you might have that with parents too. The one parent will stay in the parking lot and just, even if you have someone volunteering in your classroom, the other parent will not leave or will be very close by. One of the other things psychologically is when someone does that, there's a sense that, and you might hear this from women, particularly in relationships for a long time, they feel like the person, the abuser, knows their every move. So if you're working with a woman and she says, and I'll give you an example, I worked in a shelter program, and a woman came into shelter and she would not go to the hospital. She had injuries because she said that her husband won't be able to access the computers because whose computer was. She thought he'd find out she was at the hospital. Now that's not logical, but in a way, if you're told that this person is capable of doing that, you believe it after a while. So she wouldn't get any kind of medical help, she wouldn't go to the doctor, she wouldn't, so that impacts her financially, but certainly psychologically and emotionally also. Anything else for financial?
Drugs and alcohol.
Drugs and alcohol? Yeah. I'm trying to think of where that would go best. That's certainly psychological, that's certainly financially. You mean financially impacts the family because there's no money for, yeah.
Or if they're just taking, if the woman's working, they're just taking her check.
Right, right. Yeah.
Or not allowing her to work at all.
When the family really could really use the income. And limiting her to, $30 a week for food or something. And actually expecting, and and that's medical neglect of children. And a lot of times it's the person who's abusive will say, well, I don't have money for the children, but I do have money for, you know, alcohol. Or I do have money for my new clothes, but the kids can't go to the doctor. And that could be something that you would also see, so that when you're doing an intake or you're working with somebody, things start to, you know, you see that there are times when the parent might seem okay, but the kids seem to need medical help. It's a financial, but it's also medical neglect. And of course, in that particular case, if it's really severe, that's, you know, that ends up being abuse. And of course, some of these things also will be, which is another goal, which you guys are supposed to know. Anything else for financial?
What about some of the things that someone does support habits?
Especially if it's known within the family and it creates fear in the partner and the kids, or dealing drugs. We have families who do that. Right. So stealing, and then also placing the family in jeopardy because then, you know, the person's incarcerated and the family is without a means of support. Did we cover everything? There's some more. So how about sexual?
That one is weird. You know, like women that are only allowed to dress a certain way for the person who like everything opposed to that.
So
It kind of covers everything all in one.
yeah. And it's a control. It's a way to control someone to only dress a certain way. And it could be either way. It could be to dress more conservative or it could be to dress provocatively.
Mm-hmm.
There are abusive people who have women do that either way. So controlling what someone wears or telling them what to wear. Sexual abuse,
Spousal rape.
rape, and or partner. There are also abusers who will prostitute their partners. Maybe in smaller towns it's not as easy to notice, but certainly it's not unusual in larger areas. Sexual abuse of children, or just inappropriate discussion in front of children, that is very traumatizing for moms. Pornography, that's visual, that's open, and women forced to watch, they're not interested, really being forced to do anything that she does not want to do. And then also threatening other children. And even though some people, abusers would not abuse their children, they would threaten to do so. And that's very traumatizing for a mom. Or a dad, that would be the other way around. Anything else? This is the most, I know how uncomfortable this part is too. It's just one of those things that's hard to talk about.
The society is different too, right?
Yes, it's all, yeah. So forced sex acts, I guess you could say that. And there's actually some books that have been written that women have told their stories about some very, very bizarre kind of things that have happened to them. Anything else? And of course, rape also includes, physical abuse also at the same time, so. Okay, so physical abuse. Down to the last one, maybe.
Striking.
Striking. Bruising. Hitting so they're bruised. So to be be able to recognize that if they're flinching or, yeah. So striking, hitting, slapping, a lot of domestic violence is with a closed fist. So it's severe. And then, Ray Rice is a great example. Again, I mean, how can you knock a woman out in one punch? I mean, it's like Muhammad Ali, or something.
And a lot of
That's- I mean-
abusers will abuse where bruises can be seen.
Yes, yeah. Unseen places for bruising, yeah. Which is why if you're working with families, you can't rely on what you see. You really can only rely on your instincts and what she says and behavior. You're just kind of watching as you get to know her. And the rapport with you may take a long time to develop, and she really may keep her distance. And that makes sense. It's for her safety and safety of the children.
So, like, there's a couple times I've seen people I've known, like in the community, they don't just come out and tell me that they're being abused, but I see them take tabs on things in like local businesses. So right there, they're just calling out how they're relying.
And I believe your centers have information on getting shelter or getting non-residential help services, so that's a good thing. I believe, though, and I've worked in both fields, I've worked in domestic violence and I've also worked in early childhood, and I really believe that you have an opportunity to help women in a way that domestic violence, they do a certain thing, they, help people go to court and they shelter and everything, but you have a way of identifying and being able to help in a really compassionate way. Not to say the programs don't, but it's a different. So as you learn or you're aware of what to do, you can be a big help, and you can be a very big help to the kids in that way.
And sometimes them, like, because I do enrollments and stuff, so by them saying that no one is to know their address and phone number, sometimes that's a,
That's a clue. Yeah. Did everybody hear that? Yeah. If you can't, if they won't, and then they won't talk about other things. And there are people who, at least in our part of the state, will come to our county from New York or Buffalo, and they'll be moved there because it's so unsafe for them. And we don't get too many of them, luckily, but you know, if they can't. You don't have a shelter in this county, right?
there's one most we know.
Is there? Good, good.
They're trying to get it started.
So once the shelter's open, then we might be able to work closely with them in terms of transporting kids, keeping the shelter safe, but making sure the kids are also safe between shelter and, they get on the bus and, it's safer for them. And we used to have a policy that, well, I think actually the,
Or shelter.
the McKinley, what's the name?
Oh, McKinney Vento.
McKinney-Vento, right, puts kids at the top of the list anyway because they're homeless if they're living in a shelter, so that would be
Sometimes
nice.
they have a worker too that works maybe closely, so you can kind of know
That's good,
what's going on.
that's good. How big is the population in your county? I forgot to look that up. Like, is it a huge county?
Milwaukee,
40,000?
I'm city.
Our county is only 30,000, but, a lot of them serve the small counties around. So 40,000 is a good number to have a shelter. That's good. That'd be good. Okay, so anything else? We're at physical. Objects, using objects. Certainly weapons, knives, guns. The threat of just using any of those things.
Or just carrying it on them. Like
My mother.
I'm just thinking of my sister's boyfriend, he carries his knife on him all the time,
Yes.
and it's always like
They're
he's a
big
verbally
knives.
say, it's just a buck knife, but
Yeah.
it's always like, he'll always grab it, he'll always rub it, like, just to let her know that it's there, type of thing.
So that is that's a very clear message that everybody else might not even notice. The average person wouldn't notice that. So what that does is control her in another way.